So the meeting of the Justice, Health, and Welfare Committee will come to order. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss the Justice Services Department and various concerns received from Justice Services employees and correctional officers. The committee takes official notice of and admits into evidence all St. Louis County ordinances and resolutions. I don't see a roll call on here on the agenda, but I think we need to do that.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Gray.
Present.
Councilmember Days.
Here.
Councilmember Fitch.
Here.
Councilmember Clancy.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to remind the committee, the council members and panelists that anything of a personnel nature cannot be discussed publicly. No, meaning we cannot mention any names of employees during this public meeting. So I want to remind you of that. Also, there is an investigation that's pending either through the county council's county executive's office or the personnel office. I'm not sure. This committee is not holding an investigation. We're just trying to clarify some information today. The county council cannot hire or fire anyone, and we do not interfere with day-to-day operations. So sometimes people are a little confused as to our role as a county council and not a city council. Beth is on the call today. She will caution us whenever we tread into territory that we should not be going into. I see a little kitty cat. I was laughing. And there are a couple of people who are engaged in litigation, either as a defendant or a petitioner. So she will caution those particular witnesses, especially so if they are asked a question that they should not answer. So with that said, any questions for me before we get started? Okay, so we will start with our first, what are my questions? Witness. I don't know if we should call them witnesses, but our first panelist, which is Julia Murphy, is first on the agenda. Did you have any comments, Ms. Murphy?
No. If you guys have questions, just please ask.
Sure. When you were the interim director, were you aware of any particular issues that staff had brought to your attention with people in authority?
No.
You weren't. They weren't brought. No one brought anything
No.
to you.
Staff did not bring any issues to. No.
Who?
You asked me if any staff brought any issues
Right.
to me. No, they did not.
No employees said that they had any concerns.
Not about, no. I mean, we have the regular concerns of, there may be a grievance about something or another CO or something like that, but nothing as practices that were not being legally done or going against individuals, nothing about hiring practices or anything like that, no.
Okay, I'll let anyone from the committee have a question.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Yes, Councilwoman Clancy.
Ms. Childry, can you tell us what your position with Justice Services is currently?
I'm a unit manager.
So you were the interim director from what dates approximately?
I was acting director from January 8, 2018 to April 22nd, 2019.
And then from April 2019 until current, you have been a unit director? Or
Yes.
did you have a different, okay.
From April 22nd, 2019 to February 2020, I was superintendent of human resources and operations. And in February of 2020, I am now a unit manager, and I have been since.
Okay, so your position has been unit manager since February 2020?
That's correct.
It has not changed recently?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. That's my question.
Okay,
Madam
so
Chair, may I ask a question?
yes, I'll up real quick with that question.
Oh, okay.
Unit manager, so after you were the interim director and we brought on a new person, you became unit manager?
No. When Colonel Doyle came in, I was superintendent of human resources and operations. I went back to the position that I had prior to becoming acting director. I was in that position as superintendent until February of 2020. I took a voluntary demotion to unit manager.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. So that was a voluntary demotion.
That's correct.
That was what I was going to clarify. And you have not been upgraded recently
No,
or this year
no.
after that? Okay. Okay, Councilwoman Days.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy, how long have you been with the department?
31 years.
And in that time, have you, what has your experience been? We've had some challenges with this department. And so I'm kind of interested in what kinds of challenges did you notice in the 31 years that you've been there? What kind of situations arose while you were there in any capacity?
Staffing, keeping people here.
Staffing retention, okay. What else?
Gosh, I mean, nothing else. I mean, staffing has been the biggest. You know, we've had our training department throughout the years has been limited and then added more people to it. Other than recently, with Mr. Benasco, there has not been any major issues. Or, you know, a jail is run as a jail. You have things that have concerns, and you fix them or you reevaluate. So, you know, other than recently with hiring practices and inappropriate behaviors and comments, you know, that I'm aware of. I mean, I've started out as a corrections officer. I've been here since we were out at Gumbo. So, you know, I don't know exactly what types of issues you're looking for, you know.
Just whatever you think rises to the level that we should know about. Let me ask you about the morale with the staff. Can you give me a morale with the staff?
The morale with staff recently has been horrible. When I was director, it was fine. I didn't have any issues and concerns. There was, during that time, we had, you know, the no raises throughout the years. The morale has been down for that, for sure. When Colonel Doyle was here, there was no issues morale-wise. Yeah, I think the biggest thing was no raises throughout the years. I mean, that was evident when the employees were going through to the county council so often. So they get Prop P money, and that was a concern with Prop P money and Justice Services not getting it. And Department of Health wanted it, so I know nurses went over there. So morale was low then.
Okay, so it's your testimony that really you haven't noticed any kind of dissension or any kind of issues, challenges in terms of personnel in the 31 years you've been there, aside from the raises and not getting the appropriate money, I guess, for staffing and staffing retention. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Can you hold? I have to finish with the committee first. Thank you. I appreciate it. If you can hold on for a second. Mark, or did you have a follow-up?
No, I can let the committee voice.
Councilman Fitch?
No, ma'am, I have no questions for this witness.
Okay. Well, go ahead, Councilman Harder.
Yes, this question, and Ms. Murphy, you've been there a long time. Are you familiar with the term jail culture or family in the jail?
The word culture has most recently come up since Mr. Benasco's been here. I can say that justice services, just as police, we're a family. We are all close-knit and we rely on each other every day to remain safe and keep the inmates safe. So, we are a justice services family. But the word culture, no, we haven't used. I have not been familiar with that word until Mr. Benasco was here.
How about the term clique?
Have I ever heard that?
Used in the jail? And what I'm getting. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes. I've heard people. You have people that form their little groups, and you've heard people say cliques. Yes.
Okay. Is there a small family or clique of employees in the jail that are actually running things behind the scenes, which is making it very difficult to initiate any kind of meaningful change in the jail?
No, not since.
At this point, Councilman Harder, to interrupt you, I think that we do have several legal issues, including an investigation that is ongoing, and I would rather Ms. Murphy not answer that question.
Okay, let me rephrase. Do you think that Mr. Benasco fought this group of folks for the last 6 months trying to implement change in the jail?
I would, again, just reiterate what I said before, same concern. Okay.
Mr. Benasco tried to implement a lot of change in the jail. From his own records, it seems that he's accomplished a lot of that, but there was a lot of things that he did not accomplish. Do you know why he did not accomplish those things?
I would, again, I appreciate your question. I have the same concerns with your question, Councilman Harder.
I would assume that you probably cannot address Mr. Benasco, I guess is what. Can you give him some guidance, because he's asked the same question about 3 times? So can you kind of clarify so that Councilman Harder can have a clear understanding?
I just want to get an indication of the culture within the jail and how things actually work there.
Well, I think that how things work and the culture are two separate things, but one of the things that is being looked at is the culture in the jail and any impact it might have had. So I think that it goes to the heart of your question, Councilman Harder.
Okay, can I ask a question of someone else?
Not right now, but when we get to that person.
Okay, I'll hold my question then.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And I think, is there anyone else with a question for this?
Yes, let me see if I can get at this maybe in a different way, and I guess I'm sure Beth will jump in if I'm not appropriate. But Ms. Murphy, what was your I guess, what is your opinion, if you will, of the leadership in general? Can that be asked,
I
Beth?
have the same concerns with your question. I do appreciate it. I have the same concerns.
Okay, well, all right, thank you.
If I may, Chairwoman Gray, I have another question.
Yes.
Hopefully this is slightly different. Ms. Murphy, can you tell us what the process is for reporting employee misconduct, either between employees at the jail or between employees and those in custody? What is the process in place for that within the Justice Center?
If a staff or if any employee has an issue with any staff member, there's a chain of command depending on who the complaint is against. If it's a corrections officer, under my leadership, they had a lieutenant. Under the current, under Benasco, the supervision was pretty unclear by officers because of the sergeants and lieutenants and the different individuals that were moved around and promoted. But there's a chain of command, and you go through that process. But yeah, if you have any issue, you go to your supervisor, you go then to the next person. And if it was your supervisor that was the issue, then you would go above them.
Is any of that documented anywhere?
Yes.
Would you mind sharing with my office a copy of the documentation of that procedure that you just spoke to?
Process of how you report things?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you aware of any protections in place? Any protections in place, like whistleblower protections in place for someone to protect them from being retaliated against if they had a concern about employee misconduct?
Yeah, there's stuff, policy, PREA says you can't be retaliated against individuals if you report anything.
And what is the organization? I'm sorry, I missed that.
PREA policy has that in there, Prison Rape Elimination Act.
Okay, can you share that as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll just ask that you share those with the
Right, everybody.
council members, please, or at least the committee members.
Sure.
Okay, both of those policies.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I ask some follow-up questions? And I hope these are allowed. Is there a policy that you have regarding fraternization in the facility?
Yes.
And is that a written policy?
Yes.
And would you also send that to us as well? In the other information that you're sending there, and you're also going to send us how those are reported, how you resolve them, how you track them. Can you include all of that information as well?
Yes.
Okay. You kind of indicated earlier that really there were no major issues when you were the interim director. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so there would be no reason for you to even address anything that you felt may not be appropriate, because nothing happened inappropriately under your watch. That's your testimony. As
acting director, that is correct.
All right. Do you see any issues that exist right now?
I'm gonna go ahead and
okay.
I'll interrupt.
All right.
Same
Never mind. Never mind. Okay.
Let's go ahead and move on to our second person on the agenda, Lieutenant Colonel Troy Doyle. I hope I got your title correct.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You have would you like to make a statement or prior to us?
Yeah, well, Madam Chair, I got a pretty long, detailed statement. I'm not sure how much I can say, but if we're going to be transparent in this process, I have a pretty lengthy statement that needs to be told, and I would refer to you if you would like me to read it.
I'll defer to our county counselor.
Madam Chair, I don't know what's contained in his statement. However, I would ask the same rules that you set forth at the beginning. Any specific mention of names or identifiable information or personnel matters would be strongly discouraged. And I would ask that that not be mentioned in this forum, as it is an open session.
Okay, so I understand the names, and what was the other criteria? I'm sorry, I didn't have volume at the beginning of this meeting. What was the other rule?
Councilwoman Gray, would you like me to address that, or would you like to?
I think you should.
Okay, thank you. The personnel issues, as this is an open meeting, I would advise against speaking about people by name or by in a way that it's specifically identifiable, dealing with personnel issues. Secondly, the Justice Center and the county are involved in several legal matters. As such, I have said that I would interrupt any questioning or answers that veer into territory that are going into investigations that are incurring or lawsuits that are presently before the county.
All right, well, I would then disregard any further that I have, because information I have, I think, is very vital to this committee as you guys decide to move forward. However, we're not going to be transparent. I don't think it's to my benefit to talk about it.
Madam Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Thank you. I agree with Colonel Doyle. I'm sure what he has to say is important and certainly should be presented to the committee. What I would suggest is that the Colonel be allowed to submit his statement for review by the county counselor, and that the counselor opine after she's had an opportunity to review it, what portions need to be redacted, and then for public consumption. But the statement would be then subject to and part of the record of this proceeding, and that members of the committee would be able to get the full appreciation of Colonel Doyle's statement. That's all I have, and thank you.
Madam Chair, can I add to that?
Yes.
Couldn't we, Beth, at the end of this, have a closed session and hear everything Colonel Doyle has to say?
I think the problem with that, Councilman Fitch, is it's not been noticed for a closed session. And in addition, I don't know what's in the statement, but to the extent it may not be appropriate for a closed session, for a council closed session, of course, that would have to be something that would be reviewed and analyzed. At this point, I'm speculating, just based on the very brief conversation we've had.
So a closed session is not possible today, is what you're telling me?
No.
Correct.
Yes. I inquired about that on yesterday and was told it would. At that time, we didn't have, it wasn't appropriate.
Madam Chair?
Madam Chair.
I'm not understanding. You're saying that a closed session would not have been appropriate?
That's what I was told on yesterday. And
yesterday we would have been given the 24-hour notice. I think that's what is required.
24 hours notice. Our conversation was in the afternoon.
Okay, so there was not sufficient time to do that. Not that we could not have an executive session, a closed session.
Well, it was the same thing. Also, we didn't know if the information was considered material that had to be discussed in closed. Same thing she just said in her second comment.
Well, I will say that if we are interested in making sure that we have the whole story about what is happening at the Justice Services, that somehow we figure out how we can get this statement entered into, and sending your information, Colonel Doyle, to the counselor, that may be appropriate. I want to make sure that that document is not doctored in any kind of way. as to perhaps change the intent of whatever is going on. So if that is the way that this committee wants to handle that, that's fine. But I don't want whatever is said or written in that statement to be changed in any way.
Well, what we'll have to find out is after she reads it, can we hear it in closed session or not? And
because I'm looking at that may be a conflict in itself.
And what was I going to say?
Can I add one thing or clarify?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So this is for Colonel Doyle. Is there anything in your written statement? Let me see how to ask this right. Anything in your written statement that would be seen negatively on that behalf of the county executive's office that Beth Orwick directly represents?
There are a number of things in my report that has to do with my tenure at the jail, and a lot of it has a lot to do with some of the deficiencies that I found. However, it may be related in some ways to some cases or not. But again, Chief, I don't know how we plan on moving forward with this whole deal. And I would like to be transparent to the general public in regards to there's a lot of folks that lost loved ones there at that jail. And I think it's to our benefit to be transparent to them. And if we continue to play these games and what we can give out and what we can't give out, I think we're doing the community a disservice.
I agree.
Me too.
Let me ask here the council person, Beth. So are you saying legally we cannot accept his statement as a council? Is that your position, that he cannot directly give us his statement? What is the legal precedent for that?
I did not opine on whether or not he could give you a statement or not. As the county councilor, I represent the interest of St. Louis County, which includes the Justice Center, the County Council, and the administration, as well as other boards and commissions in St. Louis County. My authority comes from the county charter to represent the county in all matters legal. As such, that is why I had a conversation yesterday with the chair about my concerns over personnel matters, which are closed by ordinance and should not be discussed in a public forum. In addition, I shared concerns over legal matters, including an investigation into personnel issues and other issues in the Justice Center. That is the basis for my concerns and for what are perceived as my interruptions during this meeting. The witness has explained that he did not feel that he could give his statement under those parameters. I certainly understand that, and I understand the goal of the council is to be transparent. However, we need to have a legislative matter that would need to be identified in order to have a closed session as well as proper notice. I don't know the contents of his statement. I've not seen it and I've not discussed it with him. Therefore, I cannot opine on whether or not it would be appropriate for the county council as a legislative body to have that statement.
Well, I would, at some point, maybe you can opine on that one and let us know, because I mean, we've dealt with other very, very sensitive matters, other matters regarding personnel. And so I'm trying to figure out why is this one different. But if you can give us an opinion on that, I would appreciate that. Okay?
Madam Chair.
Yes. Yes.
Madam Chair, since this meeting is pretty much all about personnel matters, would it be better if we make a suggestion that we reschedule this with a closed meetings portion so that we can get to the crux of a lot of these situations? I think until we get to that closed session, we're just making noise here, and I think we need to get to the meat of what these problems are at the jail, and I think we need to do that in a closed session real soon.
I agree.
I agree.
Even know why we want to continue today with the parameters that have been set.
You know, I If I may, I think that there's still some big picture things that we can start to lay the groundwork for during this time today that aren't into the nitty gritty necessarily of the personnel conversations that also need to be had. I think we can still make good use of our time together in an open session. I know I have some further questions for some of the other witnesses that I don't think violate the conditions under which the county councilor has shared that we cannot proceed under an open session. So, while I think that it probably is in the works that we have a closed session, I think that there's probably still some things we can discuss in the open as well. And as the matter regarding the matter we just discussed, I mean, I would suggest tabling that either for a closed session, but also potentially for other inquiry that might sort of exist in parallel, even with the council's inquiry.
Yes, I think we should continue. Again, I did ask about a closed session on yesterday, and everything, just because we think it may be appropriate for closed session, it has to legally be appropriate for closed session. And I'll leave it at that because I can go further with some of our closed sessions, but I won't do that. But everything, just because we think it is not necessarily closed session information. And even in closed session, because I've been in those meetings, we could not and we're not supposed to discuss personnel by name, even in closed session, because those records are for human resources only to discuss. We could not discuss those even in closed names, even when we were in closed session, to my remembrance. And Beth can correct me if I'm right or if I'm wrong, should I say, on that. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Madam Chairwoman, one other thing I wanted to remind everyone, the county executive has agreed to the Justice Services Advisory Board's request for an independent outside investigation of the matters at hand. And I think that that is very significant for us to all bear in mind. I don't know that it is that it's prudent for us to try to duplicate another investigation that is probably underway. I'm not sure what the status of that is. If it's not underway yet, it will be underway imminently. And so I just wanted to call everyone's attention to that fact as well.
Correct. That's something I mentioned in my introduction. We are not going to, at least through this committee, have an investigation, because as was mentioned earlier, we are a legislative body, and that is not something that, to my knowledge and my discussion on yesterday, is appropriate for us.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If we look at, and Beth, you can opine on this one, if we look at our charter and we look at section 28, I believe on page 11, it gives us parameters in which we can deal with investigations. Granted, there will be another one or there will be one by the county executive. We do have, as a council, we do have the authority to establish those kinds of parameters. So if you think that that's I'm reading the wrong one, I can hear that too.
Madam Chair.
Page 11 of the charter, number 28.
I think that question was for you, Council.
With your permission, I can address that.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Days, for bringing that point up, correct, on page 11. However, it still has to be a matter of legislative importance. It has to be a legislative matter. A perfect example is that this committee met several weeks ago or months ago to discuss a specific contract involving the Justice Center. That is an example of a legislative matter because it does involve a contract. So there has to be that nexus or that connection in order to have a legislative interest. That's
so as we look to hire a person that will be taking the reins of this department, that is not a legislative matter.
Well, matters of hiring could be in the executive branch. However, I don't want to give legal opinions on the fly. I would be much more comfortable if you would address your specific questions, and I'm happy to address them in a more formal manner. That is not a problem to do so.
Well, yeah, just take the notes as we're talking here, because I want to make sure that even though the county executive may propose someone, it is left up to the council, I believe, to confirm those appointments, which means that it does fall to the legislative branch to do that. So I just want to make sure if we look at that, we do have certain responsibilities and authority that we might not have used before, but I think it's there. So I'll wait until you give me specifics on that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So. I'm taking notes. Happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Okay, so yes, Councilman Harder.
Yes, I would like to, since you mentioned before that there will be some investigation by the advisory board, I was wondering if Reverend Duvall could comment on that and how is that going to be conducted going forward?
Yes, we have him on our agenda to speak a little later. And the advisory board, I don't think is doing the investigation, but he can clarify. To my knowledge, the advisory board requested the investigation. I don't think they are. I guess he can answer that real quick. Reverend Duvall.
That is correct. That is correct. The advisory board has requested to the county executive to have an independent outside investigation.
And is that investigation already ordered? Or are you still talking about it, or what's the status?
No, the advisory board, we have not sent back the request with the parameters. We gave ourselves until tomorrow as the deadline. So there'll be a letter sent to the county executive spelling out in specifics what we want or requesting to probe.
And do you have a choice in who's doing the investigation?
It does not appear that we're going to have a choice, but we're going to make some request as to which persons or entities that we're requesting outside be the ones to probe.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Related to Reverend Duvall. Reverend, so if I heard you right, it sounds like the investigation, the company that's going to do it or the entity that's going to do it is going to be selected by the county executive's office?
Yes, sir, Mr. Fitch. What we're going to compile in our correspondence is a request of giving some options as to who we think should do it, whether it be through the courts, whether it be through other entities that I don't feel comfortable saying in this public meeting. Of course, it'll be in the document, just as some options. And then, of course, the county executive is going to select what he feels or deems necessary.
And I would hope that you'll have an opportunity to be vocal if you disagree with that selection.
Absolutely, as well as keeping this body informed as to why. And because really it gets down to this. And I appreciate the question because I know this isn't my time to speak. But at this point, it is necessary, or we feel necessary, that more people are involved in terms of what the process is, instead of it being controlled solely by the county executive's office for reasons that I'll discuss later, later in this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, Lieutenant Colonel Doyle, I guess we will schedule you to come back in 2 weeks, and after the counselor's office looks at your statement, but we, as was mentioned earlier, we don't want you to remove anything from the statement per se, especially if you think it's relevant. But we'll let her look at it, and then we'll have you come back in a couple of weeks. And we will also determine whether or not, ask the council to determine if she doesn't think it's for public information that she determined if it could be discussed in a closed session.
Madam Chair, I do have a question for Colonel Doyle before he goes.
Sure.
Colonel Doyle, were you asked to come back again as the interim director after Mr. Benasco left?
No.
Okay, thank you.
No. Also, Madam Chair, if I can also make this statement. Again, if any of my information is redacted, I'd rather not even give my statement out. Again, I'm all for the transparency, and I think this body should be aware of everything that is going on over there at the jail. And if my information is subject to be redacted, I'd rather not even submit my statement.
Right, and that is the request that it not be.
Right.
Our request as a committee is that your statement not be redacted. We just need to determine if it needs to be heard in a closed session or if it's appropriate for a public hearing. Is that correct?
And for Colonel Doyle, I, for one, would welcome a copy of your statement if you would like to send that to me.
And me too.
E3. Madam Chair, may I also say at this particular point that while we are looking into whatever the discrepancies are in this venue, in the Justice Services Department, we will be probably proposing legislation that will be required to fix some of the issues that are there. So that goes to my other issue in terms of legislative matters, that this is going to be probably fixed through ordinances. That's my take on this. And so there again, when we look at that charter statement there, I think we are well within our parameters to look at this issue in closed session. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Colonel Doyle, Lieutenant Colonel Doyle. Anything else?
Madam Chair, if I may.
I think that was.
Is it, yes.
Mute.
It was. Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 points. My reference to redaction was to if Colonel Doyle's statement was to be released to the public and there was information contained in there that was subject to personnel and or litigation, potential litigation. So I don't expect any redaction with respect to its provision, that is the provision of Colonel Doyle's statement to the members of this committee or the council. Second point, I think it is dangerous for Colonel Doyle to share his statement prior to review by the county counselor's office and prior to a closed session because of the risk of it being somehow leaked. And then the whole point of a closed session is vitiated at that point. So my position is, Colonel Doyle, that you should hold your statement subject to a closed session meeting of this body so that we can hear it directly from you. But it certainly is your choice in that regard. But I do think there's an issue of concern because if in fact it contains personally identifiable information that should not be revealed, you're opening up avenues of liability for the county. So I think we need to be cautious about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, I agree with Councilman Tracus.
And I disagree, and I will still welcome a copy from Colonel Doyle.
I'm surprised you disagree.
Okay, so we'll move to the next person, which is Mr. Darby. Mr. Darby, what is your title? I can address you properly.
Darby Howard.
Yes. What is your title? What is your title?
I couldn't hear you, ma'am.
Your title, so I can address you properly.
I was former deputy director. I've been actually filling as interim director presently.
Okay, so you don't have another. Okay, so you don't have another team.
A captain, no.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Address you properly.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any comments? statement?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. Well, let's keep the same question. You aware of any concerns, issues from your correctional officers?
Do I have any issues or concerns from my corrections officers?
Have you received any?
I have.
Can you elaborate on those? And this would be throughout your tenure, not just go ahead, Bill. So go ahead and answer my question. I guess we'll work on that.
Okay,
Well,
your
I was-
question again?
Councilman?
Oh, that's right. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to raise the same concern that I raised earlier. The potential to interfere with any and advise him not to.
Well, then may I ask a question?
We're gonna have to fix this echo.
Okay. I don't hear it now.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Mr. Darby, how long have you been with the department?
I'm going into my 31 and a half years, say 31 years.
Okay. And give me the positions that you've held while you've been with the department.
Yes, ma'am. I've been a corrections officer 1, been a maintenance officer. I've been a lieutenant in the old jail until here in the current jail, the old jail out of Gumbo in Chesterfield, across the street, the old jail, and currently in the Justice Center. I was a captain, watch commander, transportation captain, intake captain. I worked pretty much throughout the entire facility. I was a unit manager. I've been internal affairs manager. I've been security superintendent. What else? And deputy director currently until the current position.
And so now you are an interim director.
Yes,
And who appointed you interim director?
I was interviewed and hired by Mr. Vanasco.
Oh, okay. So you were in second in command then. It was Mr. Vanasco and then you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. And that's what you maintain. So since he's exited, then you are now the interim.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what challenges do you, let me see if that's right, if I can ask that question. What kind of challenges have you faced? You've been there 31 years. So what kind of challenges have you faced in your leadership roles? Is that allowed, Beth? Is that allowed?
The question is fine, as long as the answer doesn't veer into the territory. I'll stay listening. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So what kind of challenges have you faced, particularly in your leadership role there?
My leadership role, I would say staffing is always difficult. Just keeping and maintaining qualified, good staff. Especially here lately, it's been very challenging turnover. That's been the biggest challenge, and just being able to maintain and keep a certain amount of officers to run the day-to-day operations here at the jail. Mm-hmm. And throughout different times of my career.
So have you been witnessed, or do you know anything about the cliques that are there? I think that was mentioned a little earlier.
Well, as far
Jail
as
culture, that kind of thing.
Throughout my years, it's like any agency. You develop friendships, people develop relationships, and they grow together. I've been working with people for the last 30 years. I've watched them have children. I've watched their children grow up to be men and women. So that happens in every day-to-day operation. These people, they're in close quarters, especially in the old jail. We depended on each other, like Ms. Childry said. So you grow close. I mean, you're spending up to 8 hours a day with someone in a closed environment sometimes in the old jail, or it's just you and you got the inmate population, so you grow to rely on people, other people. That happens.
Okay. All right. That's it for now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, what do you feel about the morale?
Throughout my years, it's been better at different times. Currently, I think the morale is challenged a little bit right now. I can say that. Have I seen it better throughout my 30 years? Yes.
I don't know if I can ask this question. What do you think is the reason for low morale? Is that it? Okay. No.
Well, I think that there's probably, that would be a key thing that would be part of any investigation.
Okay. Disregard, please.
Thank you.
Madam
Any
Chair,
other questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes,
You're muted. Go ahead, Councilwoman Clancy.
Thank you. So Mr. Howard, you have been named the acting director of the Justice Center. Is that true?
Interim, yes, ma'am.
When exactly were you named acting director?
Right, pretty much the day after the resignation of Mr. Benasco.
And who named you acting director?
I was named by Mr. Chapman.
Is that Michael Chapman in the county executive's office?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you share more about any process that occurred as part of selecting you as acting director?
No, I don't have that answer.
So there was no discussion or anything that preceded that?
Not that I'm aware of, ma'am.
Okay, so not with you directly.
Correct.
What is your, and this might be an unfair question to ask you right now because I understand you're less than 1 week into this job, but what is your interim leadership plan in this position?
Could you repeat that once again? I couldn't.
As acting director, in between directors, I understand that there will be some sort of search probably for a new director of justice services, although I don't think the specifics of that have been named yet or the timeline. But what is your plan to lead the Justice Center during this interim period?
My plan right now is to do the best I can for this department. A lot of good people here, and I want to make sure that the transition, whatever we're going through, we get through it. That's my main objective, and it's the safety and security of everybody that works here and the inmates.
Were you at the advisory board meeting on Friday?
Yeah.
So if you were there, since you were there, you heard that the board discussed the characterizations in multiple messages to Justice Services Advisory Board members, and as a council member, I have received some of these same communications, that offers of promotion, salary increases, favorable shifts, and other benefits have been used inappropriately by jail leadership. And as such, the Justice Services Advisory Board unanimously recommended via a formal motion that a moratorium on all significant personnel changes be true until a permanent director is hired. Have you made any personnel changes since you became interim director?
The personnel change that was recently made in talking with the Department of Personnel, St. Louis County Personnel, was regards to a reinstating of a captain that was demoted. I did make that decision along with personnel.
So is it a true statement that after the Justice Services Advisory Board made a formal recommendation to place a moratorium on personnel changes, that you did in fact proceed to make a personnel change?
Well, that personnel change was kind of sitting out there undecided, and a decision based on our grievance process, a decision had to be made because I was violating the officer's grievance process, personnel-wise, and rather than let that sit there and violate that person's due process, a decision had to be made.
So is that something that you have had the chance to discuss with the Justice Services Advisory Board at all?
I was in discussion with personnel. And again, this person's fair due process to a fair grievance process was sitting in the raptures, and a decision had to be made by a certain timeline.
Okay, I think, do you plan on making any more personnel changes?
Again, this was something that I had, that person's fair due process of the grievance process based on policies set by the First Department of Personnel, and giving this person a fair due process of a 5-day grievance process, a decision had to be made, a fair decision.
So do you disagree with the recommendation from the advisory board to place a moratorium on personnel changes?
I'm not saying that I disagree. I just think that there's certain decisions in a jail. We're in a dangerous environment in here, and still decisions have to be made to keep the people safe here. And if I have to make that decision, and again, my priority is the safety and security of the people that work here and the inmates. I'm in here daily with these people. I'm concerned about their well-being as well as mine. And if it needs to make a decision, and I'll have to push that decision, I'm gonna have to push it through to whatever process I need to get it through, Ms. Clancy. Again, my priority is the safety and the security of individuals that come here every day. It has been for the last 31 years I've been here, and it continues to be that.
So it sounds like you disagree with the moratorium, the recommendation.
It's not a disagreement. It's just a matter of managing a jail in this environment and keeping everybody safe.
So are you saying you are okay with it unless there are certain conditions?
And then I would have to consult with other personnel leadership to stress the importance of keeping a position staffed so that I can make sure that there's oversight and accountability for these younger officers that I'm dealing with today. Then I would have to make that consultation and try to make that decision as quickly as possible. Again, I'm responsible for their safety and security.
And I appreciate that acknowledgement of your responsibility for their safety and security. I think all of us here share that. I think the moratorium recommendation came in regards to the acknowledgement of that very responsibility, and the fact that there has come to light allegations that perhaps promotions and other tools within the purview of the leadership of the Justice Center is being used in a way that is causing harm to the culture of the Justice Center, to the people that work there, and possibly to those in custody. So I think that there is a deep connection to this topic. And I think, you know, I have some further questions I need to develop a little bit more, but I have some concerns along the lines of some of what you were saying and how it just doesn't feel very clear. So we might need to pick that up another time. Moving on to another question. I believe that the Justice Services Advisory Board is a very important asset to St. Louis County and to the Justice Services Department as a whole. I am not sure that they have always been treated that way. Would you agree that the Justice Services Advisory Board is an asset?
I totally agree. I think they would be a valuable tool. And from what I know about the board, I welcome it.
So how do you plan to engage and collaborate with them moving forward during this interim time?
Definitely, to continue to keep the open lines of communication, open door policy, to establish interactions to try to make the operation better. No, I welcome that fully 110%.
That is the end of my questions for now, Chairwoman.
Yes, I'd like to follow up. I believe that the advisory board was aware of the grievance process, and when they requested the moratorium. Do you not think that it would have been prudent to discuss your concerns with the advisory board prior to reinstating that particular person? And could you have possibly extended extended the determination period?
Well, I know we have a certain timeline, and due to the, I guess, the resignation of Mr. Benasco, the grievance was kind of left out there kind of hanging, and I know that the timeline was coming up on it, and to find the grievance itself, we had to locate the grievance. So again, this Councilwoman Gray, just to give the person their fair due process, and looking into the grievance, it wasn't a thing of going against the advisory board, not at all. That was not my intentions. I welcome the advisory board. And again, my best interest is just for the department, as always, and county government and the people that we house in here. That's always my first and foremost interest, is their safety.
Did you reinstate anyone else or make any changes since the meeting on Friday?
No, ma'am.
And what about prior to the meeting on Friday?
No, ma'am.
So that's the only change made with staff. Okay. You mentioned that your priority is safety, and Councilwoman Clancy, her first question to you, what is your plan for making any changes or to increase safety and to assist you with your priority? What are your plans?
Well, one, that personnel matters will be on hold from this point on. I guess to continue to meet with my leadership staff now to try to find, establish with them what we have. We got some good things in place, and we still have good people in place. And to continue to meet and interact with them daily and regularly with the first line staff, as I did with yesterday. Sit and talk to them and hear their concerns firsthand, and try to meet those concerns, especially when it deals with their safety, as soon as possible with the resources I currently have. Is to continue to establish a dialogue and keep concerns, especially with safety. But again, just to continue to meet with staff and hear their concerns, especially when it comes to safety and security. And maintain an open door policy.
Okay, so what I hear you saying, you're going to have a better communication, or you intend to meet with your staff and things like that. But do you have I'm just going to use the word plan again. Do you have what are you going to do different, if anything?
What I'm going to do again is to continue to keep this operation assessed, review, interact, and communicate concerns that staff have, and address those concerns, prioritize based on security first and foremost.
Okay, does the committee have any other questions?
I do, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to continue on the path with the plan. I'm of the opinion if you don't have a plan written down, you don't really have a plan. And so I want to go back to with Mr. Benasco. I don't know if he had a plan. If you're his second in command, probably you would have been able to join him in a plan. Was there any kind of written plan that he had that you assisted with in how to improve the justice services? This is not the first opportunity that we've had to discuss challenges there. And so I want to know, did you have any kind of, or did you two together put together any kind of written plan to improve the facility?
Yeah, we've been adjusting and modifying policies that we've updated and restructuring how we operate and some reform. And those plans are currently in place and have been for a while. And we day to day we review, monitor, and we talk to staff. We have some other plans we're doing as far as talking to staff yesterday, interacting with them, the first line staff that we're going to implement as well. So there are some plans in place.
Is the advisory board aware of those plans? Have they weighed in on those plans? And if not, do you plan to make sure that they are aware of what your plans are and have some kind of input?
Sure. Again, I welcome the advisory board, as I said before. Whatever input they want to have to offer, make the jail better, safer for everybody, it's always welcome.
Okay, let me go back to another, because I think Councilwoman Clancy asked you about decisions to promote or reinstate or whatever you did on that one. How long was that decision on hold? The person that you, I guess, reinstated to a position, how long was that on hold?
It had filed a grievance. I think the grievance process is 5 days. It was getting past the 5-day mark with the grievance process, and every person is given their due process of 5 days to get a response back from their grievance.
So it was 5 days before Mr. Benasco left?
No, the grievance had been filed prior to. He held the grievance and never responded, so it had to be a decision made to give this person a fair due process.
That's my question. So how long did Mr. Benasco?
I'm going to go ahead and interrupt here, Madam Chair, if I may, as to this is personnel matter. It would be subject to any type of investigation as well.
Okay, then let me go to another question here. Are they, well, let me see, maybe I can answer this one. Are there any others that you're holding at this particular point?
I would go ahead and I'm getting an echo. I'll try to speak slowly. I'm getting the make the same have the same concerns as to the personnel matters at hand within the Justice Center.
Okay, all right, then let me go here. Do you have your own personnel department, or do you utilize the counties as a whole? You have your own personnel division there.
We have an internal, but we also utilize the county's personnel.
I didn't get all of that. I'm sorry. I didn't get all of that. Sorry.
I said, yes, ma'am, we do have one internally, but we do utilize both the St. Louis County Department of Personnel as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for now. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
One more person, Councilman Harder. Councilman Fitch, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Just one. Mr. Howard, you're the interim director. You may not be the permanent director. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes, sir.
So the questions about plans and things like that, my guess is you had this dropped on you at the last minute and you haven't had much time to think about what you would do if you're the real director. Is that fair?
That is fair. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Councilman Harder.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Howard, a couple things. As the interim director, who do you report to directly on a day-to-day basis?
The county executive's office, Mr. Chapman.
So your interaction is with Mr. Chapman directly?
Yes, sir.
And how often during this interim period have you talked with him?
On a few occasions, yes. At least three occasions we've interacted.
Okay. There's some talk from people that work in the jail that think that Miss Murphy is the interim director. Have you heard that before?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. Would that be a problem if that was the interpretation among the other jail employees?
Mr. Harder, I have not heard that. So again, to answer that question, because I haven't heard it, I can give you a real, I guess, answer. Would it be a problem? Because I haven't heard it. And I just, to come up with an answer, I just can't answer the problem because I've not heard that. That is not what I've gotten, the feedback I've gotten.
Okay. And do you feel comfortable being in charge as the interim director?
Yes, sir. I've been doing this business for 32 years. So yes, sir.
And do you think you have the respect of your other officers there for this time being?
For the most part, yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And if there was to be a problem where there'd be a conflict over leadership there, how would you step in to rectify that?
Directly and swiftly and appropriately.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I do have a follow-up on Councilman Harder's question.
Okay, I do as well, but go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Howard, what role, I was told that County Police Lieutenant James Morgan is coming over there to the jail to be assigned there. What role will he play at the jail?
Mr. Fitch, I have not heard that. I wouldn't know.
Okay. All right. So that's news to you. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, to follow up with Councilman Harder's questions, that is why I am attempting to find out if you have a plan, because we want to determine if you are comfortable in your role, and even though you just was promoted, I guess I should say, you were the deputy director, and I think you would have some idea as what would be important to make a better environment there in the Justice Services Center. So it would be prudent if you had some type of plan in mind, even if it's not concrete, although it may not be in writing, is a little concerning. I would think that you hadn't thought about that before now. I mean, and I could be wrong, but I think that's what some of us are trying to, and I really don't want to put words in my council members' mouth, but a plan is important. And if you move into a role that you have been, as you say, you've been there for 30 years, I think you should have a pretty good idea of what's needed to have a better environment over there in justice services. These issues, albeit we're discussing it today, have been going on to our knowledge, to my knowledge, for years. Although you both say that you're not aware of any concerns from your staff, we've received several letters, phone calls, emails to the contrary. But we can only take you at your word. I'm not contradicting you whatsoever. I'm just telling you my experience. So I think that we all have concerns about that. And again, if I'm misspeaking, let me know. But as far as my colleagues are concerned, so I wanted to follow up with that.
Concerns. I just want to stand corrected on that. I never said there were if people haven't brought concerns to me. There have been concerns, but they're personal matters that I can't discuss. That's a recommendation of Ms. Orwick, but there have been concerns, and I take my staff concerns always seriously when they bring them to me. As far as a plan, in 30-some years, believe me, in a jail environment, you're always planning. And as Mr. Fitch said, and there's certain, I'm just fine-tuning my plan as I interact with my leadership staff and the line officers that I work in this environment. But in this environment, you're constantly planning.
Any other questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, just a statement, and I do appreciate your probing that a little bit more. It was not my intention to indicate that he's only been there a short period of time and that he should have something. My concern was that he was working with the previous director there, and as the second in command, I would have thought that they would have been working on something together in ways to fix some of the concerns that are at the facility. So it's not to diminish, what he has thought of doing, but it was to perhaps look into what was already there and perhaps embellishing on that. So I appreciate you probing that a little bit further and allowing me to clarify, my concerns. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for this panel?
I have one follow-up question, Chairwoman. Mr. Howard, back to the conversation about the reinstatement of that one staff member to a position that they had been demoted from. I imagine that you have to consult with human resources about those kinds of decisions, even if they are within your purview. Is that correct? Who in human resources did you speak with about this matter?
Councilman Clancy, I would go ahead and object to specifics right for this, as this would definitely be part of something that would be important to any investigation moving forward. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Are we going to have a statement from Reverend Duvall?
Yes, we will.
Okay, I didn't know if you were finished or if we're just moving on to the next speaker.
Now we're going to move to the next
Thank you.
person if no more questions for Mr. Howard. And our next panelist is our witness is Tony Weaver. Are you aware of any concerns from staff that have been mentioned to you or anyone else?
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Can I talk about that?
Madam Chair, I don't know if Mr. Weaver was on the call or on the at the beginning of the meeting. I'm not sure.
Yes, I was.
You.
Yes, I was on my phone and I went into the room and put you guys on the video screen. I was on the
Uh-oh.
I just wanted to clarify that he heard the advice.
Yes, you do know you cannot mention anyone by name.
That's correct.
So you can answer the question without, under those
Oh,
parameters.
okay. Oh, yes, I did hear the information. I can't mention it by name, anyone by name.
Yes. So what concerns have you been made aware of?
Well, you have people now that the correctional officers are not comfortable with speaking with the current team that's currently in place. And after the situation as of yesterday, it is total chaos over here because people are concerned about what just happened for someone that was not.
Madam Chair, Councilman Gray, I don't know what Mr. Weaver is going to be talking about. However, if he's referring to specific situations, it could lead to identifiable information. It would definitely go into personal information. In addition, any investigation that'll be forthcoming, I would think would touch on these matters, and I would not want to compromise that investigation.
Yes.
Well, let me make a statement.
In general terms.
Let me make a statement. I think that when someone mentioned they was going to wait, 2 weeks before you guys have another hearing, I think that would be a major concern with people coming into jail on a daily basis and addressing issues that they feel like they can't address. I think it's a problem. 2 weeks is definitely, I think it's too long. That's my personal opinion. If I'm talking to people in the jail, that's my statement.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Mr. Weaver.
Yes. Well, let him finish.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have more?
No, yeah, I was done. I was done with my statement.
Well, I was asking you what concerns had you been made aware of without giving anything specific.
Well, I guess any chain of command that you have when anybody working in the private sector, even the government, when there was issues or problems or concerns with a person or individual, you're asking the employees to go to a group of people that was part of a problem consistently. So that's the concern with the staff people that's here. You're asking them there's a problem.
Madam Chair, I think this goes to the heart of what would be considered right for an investigation. And I think that this is just, we've got concerns of litigation and with personnel issues. It's all three.
Okay, Councilman Fitch.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Weaver used the term, it's total chaos over here. Now, I understand I can't ask about something that could lead to an investigation. An investigation is something you do after the fact. I would like to hear from you what you think, because it's total chaos there, what could happen in the future as you see it? Because you're the change management person, is that correct?
I see my understanding, there may be a blue flu and people not wanting to come to work.
Okay. And what would you think we need to do about that to keep that from happening?
I think I was at the advisory board meeting on last Friday. I think the moratorium is very critical in terms of the success in the future of what's going on in the jail right now.
And if there's a blue flu, how do we handle that?
Well, I think from you depending on the corrections officer does a fantastic job, but you have to have a certain number of corrections officers in this facility.
Do you know if there's a plan in place of what to do if there's a blue flu?
I think that would be a security issue or a safety issue with the staff members. You don't have the appropriate staff members that's trying to maintain the jail.
So we're talking about inmates can be in fights and nobody can break them up. There could be escape attempts. All of those type of things could happen.
I mean, that may be putting it, there may be a stretch to that, but yeah, if you're limiting the staff that's currently there will be impacts from my point of view.
Do you have any idea when this could happen?
I don't have a clue.
Okay. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weaver, for being candid on that particular point, which goes to my point a little earlier with Mr. Howard. I know that you cannot be the only one over there who has a sense that there may be some blue flu action. And so I guess the question is, what happens if that does happen? What are the plans for addressing that so that we can maintain the security of both the personnel inside the facility, the inmates, as well as the employees?
Well, you will have to depend on the director and his staff, his administration team, to make sure they're on top of things that's happening and continue to communicate honestly and openly with full transparency with the staff members in this building.
Do you think that is happening?
Absolutely not.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you think that there's a lack of confidence, or there's some concern with the people in authority?
Madam Chair, I think that would go to the heart of an investigation as to that we were talking about earlier. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Let's go to the committee people, which would be Councilwoman Clancy.
Yeah, Mr. Weaver, can you, I believe you just shared that your position is change management consultant. What is your exact title?
Change management coordinator. One of the roles or plans was for me, because of my experience I have within change control, to come over and review the procedures, and talk to the staff members, minimize, communicate with morale in the building that's here. That was my role, my understanding, my role when I came over.
Are you in an appointed or a merit position?
Appointed.
So you've been appointed by the county executive.
That is correct.
And change management. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about your role beyond what you just kind of gave us in a nutshell. What are the scope of your role and responsibilities?
Well, as I'm going out, since I've been here, I've been taking a look at procedures that hasn't been updated since 1994. And when you guys were asking about the process for certain procedures, maybe harassment, maybe grievances, everybody have to understand that process and protocol for that. And I'm going on record saying everybody don't understand what their process and protocol is from a police standpoint. because we're too busy fighting other things over here, as you guys are well aware of. So you don't have time to deal with daily updates and modifications that is critical for the success of this department continually. You shouldn't come over here in 2020 and have to look at procedures that haven't been updated since 1994 or 1997. Every procedure need to be looked at. They need to have a process to make sure you have procedures that's continually updated every year, every 2 years. Has to happen for the success of any entity.
Do you have any certifications in change management or training or anything like Six
Oh,
Sigma
absolutely.
or anything similar to that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I did change management, change control over IBM and Boeing for over 10 years.
Okay. I don't know a lot about that field. I know a little, maybe enough to be dangerous, but a big piece of that obviously is processes and protocols and things that can be written and documented. But I think part of what is so challenging about this Justice Center and the conflict that we have here is about culture and relationships and lack of trust. I'd be curious what recommendations you have about turning around some of those aspects.
I can't hear you, Lisa. I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
She said, do you have any recommendations?
Oh, yes, I have a list of recommendations I can send you guys if you guys like. What I've been
Sort of the change management stuff you might be looking at. I think a big piece of the conflict here and dysfunction that I see within this department is about relationships. It's about trust. It's about things that are harder to measure, but are at the foundation, are fundamental to the success of this team and what they provide for the staff and for St. Louis County residents and those in custody. And I'm wondering, sort of in your expertise, what recommendations you would have that get at some of those matters related to the culture of the department.
Yeah, I can send you guys a written document that I have some recommendations because you just mentioned something very critical. Any successful organization, you have to have teamwork, you have to have constant communication, and more importantly, you have to have trust. If you do not have trust in your organization with your team, it's going to fail from day one. And that's one of the things that Mr. Manasco is trying to bring into this jail. And that's totally went out the window at this point.
Do you think that bringing in an outsider to lead justice services, whether that's for the interim or for the long term, would be a step towards building more trust?
Now, what was your question again?
Do you think that bringing in an outsider to lead justice services, whether that's in the interim or longer term, would be an important piece possibly to inspire more trust?
Yes, I do. Bring an outsider, yes, I do.
Okay, and then my other question is, as I've mentioned, the Justice Services Advisory Board is a true asset to St. Louis County. It is full of experts in many fields that I think hold a piece of the puzzle here to changing the culture and changing the outcomes in our Justice Center. And I know that there's at least one advisory board member that has quite a bit of experience also in managing change and process and culture within organizations. And so my question for you is, have you, Mr. Weaver, been in collaboration or worked with the Justice Services Advisory Board on some of the goals of your position?
No, I have not. I just attended some of the meetings. I communicated with some of the board members, but I have not collaborated with them, no, on the change process.
That is the end of my questions.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me continue on in that line of questioning with Mr. Weaver. Mr. Weaver, how long have you been there in this position?
Since November.
So not quite a year yet.
That is correct.
And who is your direct report?
It would be County Executive Page.
So your recommendations that you have written, have you presented those to the county executive?
No, me and Raul was actually in conversation, so he has some of my information. But And let me just roll back for a minute. I would say I think Dorby would probably be my direct report because I'm over here in Justice Services. Because I was reporting directly to Raul.
Okay, so you reported directly to Mr. Benasco.
That is correct.
Okay. And you presented, or did you present your plans to him for improvement in the facility?
Well, we were having constant communication almost every other day in terms of the planning that he was doing in Justice Services.
Was he receptive to your plans for changes in the facility?
Yes. Yes, he was.
Okay. So let's move a little further. And we talked about, because Councilwoman Clancy mentioned the outsider. Now, Mr. Benasco was an outsider. So
yes.
How did he improve morale, or did morale improve? Did morale go down with that?
Okay, well, first you got to get back to the culture. In any organization that you have a culture. So when you have somebody that's coming in, automatically, if the employees doesn't accept that person, he's already is going to be from day one an outsider. Then they're going to do everything possible not to let him in and to infiltrate the culture, because they've been doing this for the last 15 to 20 years. If you're going to do any modification to change control, which is change control number one, in any book you read, you have to communicate with the team. You got to get a buy-in from the team. If that team or culture don't buy into your change control, it's going to be destroyed from day one. You never get it off the ground.
Do you think the personnel there bought into Mr. Benasco's methods or plans or whatever?
No, I do not. They followed him every step of the way.
Okay. Well, so much for your bringing an outsider in. I mean, if we brought an outsider in, it didn't work, they didn't buy in. We have an insider, they may do very well do the same thing. So we're in a kind of in a catch-22 situation here.
Okay, my recommendation would be you have to make sure the human resources a vital role, and plays a vital role in this process, along with the legal team plays a vital role. If they're not involved in this process and allowing them to do what they need to do, it's going to be a problem. So when you guys do your investigation, when you look back, make sure you look at the legal piece and make sure you look at human resources. And I think you'll find out where the stumbling block came in.
Well, I would also say that you would absolutely include your advisory board. As Councilwoman Clancy said, there's some very smart people on that advisory board. I think they have not been allowed to be as involved as they should be, even with personnel. And so I think that that's critical, that whatever plans you have going forward, that you include them 100% in that process.
I would agree.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Hart.
Yes, from a couple questions from Mr. Weaver. Mr. Weaver, you seem to have some good ideas here. Did you share these ideas with Colonel Doyle when he was there?
No, I don't think I was here. He was leaving probably maybe a week or two right after I got here. I don't think we really communicated that much at all.
Okay. Did you share these ideas, or have you shared these ideas with Mr. Howard?
No, I have not.
Okay. You mentioned early on that something happened there this week. What happened there this week?
That's what he can't
Madam
answer.
Chair, thank you, Madam Chair.
So something happened there that upset the jail?
Yes.
Okay. You talked about the blue flu. You must have some inside information. Why would people resort to blue flu or sometime in the future?
Okay, Beth, can I answer that question?
To the extent it involves a personnel matter, I don't know the answer to the question, but to the extent it would run afoul of any investigation and the integrity of an investigation or a personnel matter, I would advise you not to.
When somebody threatens blue flu, that's a cultural thing within an organization. That's not one person walking off the job. Is there something there that would drive something like that in this organization?
But I think the continuing instability of the movement of this organization to the next level, you got to realize that if you got a group, the culture that's been here for over 20 years, and you coming in saying, okay, we're going to put some changes or implement some change control processes, people are not going to like that. They're going to have problems with it. And I think that's what the problem is, because people are afraid of change, period. And if people don't have a total buy-in, as I mentioned before, it's going to be a struggle from every day you come in this building. It's going to be a challenge or a struggle for people that have been here 20 years. I don't like what's going on. I don't like what he implemented. So we're going to revert back to doing the way we did it before.
If that was going to happen, that would have happened when Mr. Bonasco first joined the organization, wouldn't you think?
Well, that was resistance from the culture team that was here.
Okay,
from day one.
But there was no blue flu when he joined the organization.
No.
Okay,
no, I would agree with that.
So now that he's gone, why would there be blue flu?
Well, first of all, they was excited about, because you have a new person coming in, and they were really positive. Some people were, some people were not. I say the masses were happy with the new changes that was coming down. So now all that's stopped right now. So people are now, their backs against the wall. What do we do now?
So would
That's
they
where they are at this point.
Would they be protesting through blue flu because Mr. Bonasco's not there, or because he was there and they don't like the change that actually became incorporated into the jail system?
I would say that you're trying to change a culture that's been in place for 20 years plus. You got a guy from the outside. That's the problem. That's the stumbling block that you have. Unless these people understand that you're going to change the process, it's going to be more efficient, much better, then you're going to end up with the same result that we have right now.
Okay.
And it's going to revert back to the same problem within a week or two or three.
I asked early on in this discussion about a clique or a culture in that jail. Is there a underlying culture that controls the jail?
Yes.
And of the 200 and so employees, how many would you say are part of that?
I think we have about almost 400 employees over in the jail, if I'm not mistaken. And I think somebody has to correct me if I'm wrong. I would say maybe 45, 50 people may be resistant to the change.
And those 45 people are calling the shots?
Well, I don't say the 45 people calling the shot, but you got a culture, circle of people that you ask any individual been here longer than 5 years to tell you, I'm not never coming to the third floor, and they can name names of the people, the reason why they're not coming. Or if they tell me somebody walking down the hall, they're going to automatically get a phone call and ask, why were you on the third floor?
So you got people checking on people and why they shouldn't be where they should be and all that?
It's the culture. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Hi.
Hey, still
Yes.
here.
Yes,
My question is actually for Miss Murphy. I saw you shaking your head and not agreeing with some of Mr. Weaver's characterizations of the resistance to change and that sort of thing. Would you mind commenting? Or
yeah, I don't mind commenting. He just made a comment about phone calls made in reference to people walking down the halls. As of Wednesday last week, that has stopped. That was a thing that Mr. Bonasco would do specifically for me. He would call me on the phone and ask me what I was doing up on the third floor. I also know that since Wednesday of last week, as of Thursday morning, walking into the jail and hearing staff, the morale and people are excited that that he is no longer here. So, I also am on the third floor, and I can tell you numerous times that he has called and asked me what I'm doing up there. So, you can talk to, I don't know how many people Mr. Weaver speaks to, but I regularly go into jail and have been up there since the change as of Wednesday. And, prior to that, staff was their morale was very low, and people are looking forward to change. When our last director came into this facility, he specifically stated he did not like direct supervision. And I was a superintendent, and as a superintendent and as a former trainer, that's what this jail was designed for, direct supervision. So in the meantime, since the changes and the different positions that he has put in place and taking some management off the units has caused officers to not be able to learn their inmates because the practice of direct supervision was not followed or not honored under Mr. Benasco. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. So yeah, that's why I'm shaking my head. He's changed management. With all due respect, I don't know what Tony Weaver does, but we don't have 400 employees. And I would think that would be something important that somebody in change that's writing policies and protocols and has an oversight for that would be aware of. And our policies are reviewed on a regular basis. I would say that you may look through our policy book and find some that have not been, but as a director, as the acting director, I did several policies and reviewed them. And as incidents happen or new things come up, we revise and look at those policies on a regular basis. So I would like to say on the record that the morale here is better today than it was before Wednesday.
Madam Chair, can I ask a follow-up of Ms. Childry? I'm sorry, Ms. Murphy.
Murphy, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right.
I will. Did Mr. Weaver have a comment back to that?
Yes, I do. Let me just say, Julia Childry Murphy is part of the 20-year culture issue or problem. So when she go up to the floor, she's going to have her key people she's going to talk to say everything is great. But she also going to have a group of people that's not going to want to talk to her because she's part of the issue that was here before.
With all due respect, Mr. Weaver, I do not agree with that. And if you'd like to...
I wouldn't ask you to agree with it. I'm making a statement.
Okay, well, me and you can go on a tour together and make a list of how many...
I don't need you to go on tour with me. I've been to the jail several times. Okay. The problem is that you have a culture up here that you've been a part of. It's been a problem. And you got on early on saying there was no problems when you were in charge.
Okay, we don't want you guys to go back and forth.
Okay.
Let's end that.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman Fitch.
My question's not for Ms. Murphy, it's for Mr. Howard. Mr. Howard, you're the interim director of the jail. You heard Mr. Weaver say there's total chaos over here. Is that your perspective on what's going on in your shop? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Unmute Mr. Howard. Unmute Mr. Howard.
That is totally untrue. That's false. I invite you guys to come over right now and walk through the jail with me. Mr. Weaver, I don't know where you got this from and what's your agenda right now.
I don't have agenda.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do, sir. I invite anybody to walk through the jail with me. Come right over here right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. He answered me. Thank you, Madam Chair. He answered.
Any other questions for Mr. Well, we need to get to Reverend Duvall. If you got the rest of you can still remain on the call just in case we have a little more time. Reverend Duvall, what would you like to say?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and all the council persons for this opportunity to begin what I would categorize to begin a discussion on some very serious issues. I did not write a prepared statement, so I'm going to freestyle and be as short as possible. The experiences that the advisory board has been very turbulent from the start. I think we should remember why the board was even reinstituted since it had remained dormant for 2 years. I find it a bit interesting when we talk about the history of the jail prior to 3 deaths. We should probably not in this meeting start looking back at the trends of the behavior that maybe led to what appears to be possible negligence inside the Justice Center. With that said, we've gone on.
One moment. Could you all mute your phone, please, Mr. Weaver? Mute your phone, please.
Instead of revisit the last year, I think what I would like to do is get into the moment of now of what this advisory board has been saturated with from several different sources. And I'll try to categorize it as this. Yes, I want to go on record in saying that it's a culture. I don't know what other term to use. And if somebody would like to provide me another term, I'll use that as well. But what's going to speak to the facts are this, that in that jail, there are practices. We'll talk about use of force policies, restraint policies, report writing policies that are all drawn heavily on the administration of those policies. I heard, I believe it's the current interim director, Mr. Darby Howard say that yes, it's close quarters and we work every day and we become a family. I believe across America, there are many people who work together in close quarters, and those that have healthy environments, they do become a family. But the result of those families do not result in breakups of marriages, breaks up of having sexual activities on the job, in the building, things that are reported that are known. I'm not speaking of anything that's not public knowledge already. So Beth, please let me continue to make a statement before I'm interrupted. These type of things that are fostered in a culture leads to favoritism, nepotism, and all type of things that are not healthy in any environment, specifically a jail. I want to stop right there and put on pause that this advisory board respects and appreciates the hardworking members of correctional officers that are putting their life on line already in a dangerous situation. The fact that we're on this call now virtually is because we're under COVID. God forbid, had we been under COVID on the previous administrations on how they were operating that jail. We already had 3 people die. Now it's up to 6 total that have died in the jail for different other reasons that deal with health and those issues we can't discuss on this call. But if it was 6 on natural deaths or neglect, God forbid what would have happened under COVID under these situations. So I want to applaud the medical staff and the public health team, and specifically Valerie Nelson, for bringing some of that or keeping our numbers down. Now, relative to all this personnel sniping and the history, only that's going to be proven by the personnel department. And I believe, based on what I was finding out in the last 3 months, especially when we start talking about tasing incidents that were being covered up, beating incidents that are being covered up. These are the 2 administrators that are still on this call doing that culture that I believe from what I've read shows evidence. The most recent reinstatement of a particular person. Yes, go ahead.
I would just caution you as a member of a county board, as part of our county, of the same things about talking specifics about personnel or any litigation or investigations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, public knowledge that would show that these incidents occurred and the pattern. The sense of urgency. The urgency is real. It appears that we pick and choose what is urgent, what we need to talk on. And the urgency is reactive. It's not proactive. So there's some things that are going on currently. that I'm aware. And yes, Mr. Howard knows I will come over in the jail, as he just said, everybody come over there. Well, I can assure you now, when the incidents that are reported by others, then I'll make sure I'll ask the council or other members to then show up at the jail based on those things. Because we're chasing something and we're not ahead of them from a policy and procedure. Outsiders. Yes, we need an outsider just like we needed an insider. For the record, it should be noted that there was no assistant director position. There had been one years ago, but it had been eliminated. So at some point there was the director, and then there's whoever the underlining people were the ones that were running the jail. The assistant director position just got reinstated under the time that Mr. Benasco was coming in and Mr. Darby Howard was that insider. It was the belief of the administration, along with those who could speak to that, is yes, and that was when Colonel Doyle was the interim, that it was going to be necessary. I'm sorry that Colonel Doyle was not able to make his statement, but we'll find out exactly what is in there because it is a linchpin to relevancy from historical content. Why was the interim director brought in a police person to come into the jail in the first place? Secondly, to get an outsider to bring in new, when I say new, industry-wide challenges and changes. I believe that we reject collectively, we're rejecting outside industry-wide change. Maybe Mr. Benasco, the former director, was not that person, but that person brought in a whole lot of new, innovative, updated, industry-wide things to run the jail. That's what caused, in my opinion, the blowback. Some of these same individuals, excuse me, Beth, I won't say names, were beneficiaries of getting raises. I would like this council, as I make my final close in my statement or my rant, for the council to be aware that people are still getting paid at certain salary bases when they have had reduced roles. Now some of them want to return to their role, as I don't even know if their salary had changed, but it's about influence and persuasion. And the influence and persuasions of certain people of that culture is taking us backwards, not forward. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Duvall. You answered the basic question that I have. Anyone else have any questions?
Maybe just a statement.
Yeah. Oh. I proceed, Councilwoman Gray.
Yes, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I think to dovetail on that a little bit, I see the challenges before us at the Justice Center as much broader than some of the recent events that have happened. I mean, we are talking about years of leadership challenges and other challenges within the Justice Center. I know that, I mean, especially now, especially related to the health and welfare of those in custody. Now we have learned about, at least it's new for me, learning about these concerns related to, you know, the culture, the toxic culture, and how staff.
Volume out again.
The environment at the Justice Center. I'm sorry, Councilman?
Your volume goes in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will speak closer. And I will try to find my headphones for later. But what I was saying, though, is that I think the issues before us, I think, extend much longer than the things that have come to light over the past few weeks. And as we proceed to inquire about the Justice Center, I would like to hear a little bit more broadly, too, a status update of some of the accomplishments and improvements that have been made over the past year, because I do know that there are some, particularly when it comes to some of the medical care, as well as I would like to see an acknowledgement of some of the areas that are still challenges and how that will be addressed.
Thank you. Councilwoman Days, I think I saw your hand.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Reverend Duvall, for that passionate statement. You mentioned one word that stuck with me, and that's urgency. And I'm not sure how to put this, but it's only urgent when something happens and it makes the newspaper. It's not an urgent matter when you have low morale. You have somewhat questionable health care for some of them. I understand that has been improved to a certain degree. And the lack of your involvement in many of these is a very, very troubling to me. Now, do you know why you are not, or your committee is not involved in many of the issues that have happened here to the extent that you could be involved?
I think, and thank you, Councilwoman Days. I believe it's a combination of, I don't want to defer a word as obstructionist. There's a lack of trust. There are individuals that don't trust this board. They don't trust our questioning, so they always defer and refer to the county counselor. The county counselor's office gives information, and so some of these things that we're asking, which we felt early on were just basic, set a tone that if you had a board that was not existent 2 years prior, then what did it look like? So we've grown, but I challenge the transparency of, in addition to the justice services, to personnel department and possibly the county counselor's office. But I'll be more specific in a closed session as to why I feel that way. So there just appears to be obstructionists. And before I no longer take questions, Madam Chair, I would ask that you would allow my colleague, Dr. McBride, to make a statement before we close today when we're talking to the advisory board. Sorry, Councilwoman Days, if that wasn't clear enough, but those are the things that come.
That was very clear, and my hope is that I'm a firm believer that leadership is key, and if leadership only comes to bear when there's some urgent matter, then that's not appropriate. And we've known that there have been challenges in this area for years. And so it was a good thing that your advisory board was reinstituted, but reinstituted without the level of commitment and input that you can make means nothing. It's just window dressing. That's a favorite word of mine, but it's just window dressing. And so we need to make sure, even at the legislative branch, that what we can do legislatively is done, and let the others fall where they may. But I appreciate your passion here, and I'm looking forward to your continuation and making some really great strides in how we can make this a model facility and not just, hit with the news. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilwoman Fitch.
Thank you, Councilwoman Days. She said exactly what I had intended to say, so thank you for that.
Okay, Mr. McBride. Would you like to make a step? Oh, Harder.
Sure. Oh, go, whatever.
Councilman Harder, I think you wanted to say something. Pardon me, Mr. McBride.
Madam Chair, he's not showing. Madam Chair, he's not showing mute.
Right. We'll come back. We'll come back, Harder. Mr. McBride, can you proceed?
Certainly. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Looks like there's an echo.
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, I'll make this brief, and I appreciate the chance to speak. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. And thank you, Chair Gray and the councilpersons Clancy and Fitch and Days for this chance to speak briefly. I'm a member of the board, as you know, and served since January 2019 when you appointed us to the board, and served with a great board of very qualified people under the leadership of Reverend Duvall in many transitions and through some difficult periods, as Reverend Duvall mentioned. I just want to make a few comments, mostly to back up what Reverend Duvall said. We've been working very hard and seriously taking the charge that the county executive and the county council has given us when we were appointed to provide advice and oversight over the policies and procedures of the county jail, and we ask many serious and probing questions about matters that are relevant, and we do so always in public, and except when necessary to go into executive session, and there's minutes for our meetings. The council has access to those meetings, and at least one council member has attended many of our meetings, and staff members from other council offices attend, and the public and the media attend on a regular basis. I just make that point to point out that we've been doing our work diligently and in public, and those records are available. We've diligently been looking at the issues that we've been talking about for over a year now, and we've been trying hard to get at some of the questions that we've been talking about today, that you've heard about today. We've asked a lot of questions about very important topics. We've been trying to ascertain information on some of the questions that we've been talking about today. In part, our role is limited to an advisory role. And we have limited oversight powers, I would say. And we've wrestled and debated this in a lot of our meetings for a long period of time, and over what the scope of the advisory board is. And that has been a struggle. I will say that I have personally found frustrating, and I think members of the board have found frustrating. And about what the nature and the scope of our board is, and what is confidential and what is not. We've wanted to raise some important issues, and we've not been able to explore all of them. And I understand that some things are very confidential in nature. I understand that some issues are personnel matters and we cannot talk about them, but we've been struggling to answer some very important questions about things like the deaths in the jail and things like that. But it has become clear to me that there are many issues that are longstanding and predate the tenure of the recent directors that we've heard about. And there are longstanding cultural and organizational concerns that need to be addressed. And, you know, the issue that the Reverend brought up is important. And that's why the board last week reached some unanimous decisions that you've heard about and that you've read about in the paper, such as that we believe that there should be an outside independent investigation, and the county executive agrees with that. We're going to come to a recommendation about what the scope of that investigation should be. We also recommended that personnel decisions and promotions be frozen immediately, as we've heard today, and that the Justice Services Board have a formal role in the hiring of the new director. And we also believed that the interim director should be a person from the outside, as we've discussed. We came to those decisions unanimously in our discussions last week. I hope that these recommendations be taken seriously by the council, and we appreciate the council that appointed us to this board. And I'm constantly moved by the hard work of the corrections officers, the health workers serving the jail. And, you know, I'm personally motivated to do my work on this board for them, the corrections officers, the health workers, the inmates serving in the jail and their families. And they deserve safety and justice. And that's why I'm on the board. So that's my statement.
Yes, can you clarify why you think it's good that we have, let me let Ms. Taylor, well, let's go back to Mr. Hart, Councilman Harder first.
For Reverend Duvall. Mr. Benasco had a lot of good ideas and goals he wanted to accomplish when he took over the jail. By his own report, he accomplished a lot of them, and on paper, he seemed very successful in a very short time. If this is true, why would he resign from his position when he's having so much good success? Your opinion.
Thank you. Councilman Harder. In my opinion, that Mr. Benasco worked extremely long hours. He did make a lot of improvements, but as he began to lose support from his command staff, he found it, in my opinion, difficult for him to pursue and make some additional progress while struggling with his own personal situation in Florida. And most recently, he began to share his frustration with those other two departments that I mentioned, that he felt, again, he was no longer going to be effective and was not going to continue to take on these personal allegations and things to where it wore him out. And he decided, in the best interest of the jail and for his family, that he wouldn't stay.
Okay. And what would be the advisory board's role in finding a replacement for Mr. Benasco, and how long do you think it will take to find and hire a replacement at this time?
I wish my colleague on the board, Jeff Smith, if he was available, he could speak with more clarity as to what the board, what we're wanting specifically. We know, unfortunately, because we just... He is on the call? Yes. Is it possible, Councilman Harder, that I can defer that question to Mr. Smith?
That's fine.
Thank you.
And we have about 3 or 4 minutes, Mr. Smith. We have to get to another meeting because I need to let Ms. Taylor speak as well.
Sure. Thank you very much, Reverend. Thank you, Councilwoman. Reverend Duvall, did he say he was deferring to me to talk about the preferred scope of the inquiry that we're seeking?
No, more specifically, Jeff, on looking for a new director and what that would look like, from our opinion, in terms of the selection process.
Yeah, so, we have not laid that out specifically. I think we have talked as a board and would like to ensure that one member of our board is a formal member of the search committee that we hope will form immediately. And I think I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Ms. Taylor?
Yes, Ms. Taylor, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you so much, Councilmember Walton Gray. And thank you. I first of all want to express my appreciation to the rest of the council members for being here. As Mr. McBride, Dr. McBride said, I think we have felt like we have been very much on our own, struggling. And I'm very, very proud of this board and how we've come together. But I would say, first of all, we were formed last July, almost a year ago, and in our first months we were new, and we were just trying to figure out who we were, what we were supposed to be doing, and we had Troy Doyle as our interim. He was a very open door person. We were promised transparency, and I think to the extent he could do it, because he was fairly new too, I think we felt we were responded to. And then things changed. Let me fast forward to this investigation, because I know I don't have very much time. I think I was the first one to suggest an outside independent investigation, but the rest of my fellow board members thought about it almost simultaneously or shortly thereafter. And the reason I did was because of the multitude of comments from people within the jail, from staffers, current staffers, and some former staffers who felt free to call me and talk to me and send messages to the rest of the board about what was really going on. I have to say much of this was not a surprise to me, because I have a couple of hats. I take my attorney hat off, and I take my process improvement hat. I'm one of those trained process improvement people along with Alex Garza. But my other hat is Wednesday mornings I've been coming in just listening to them. And when you do that, when you have feet on the ground in the jail, you get to sense things, and you see how people treat volunteers, you see how people treat inmates. And so I've had a lot of concerns about these. I presented many of those to Troy when he came, and he welcomed them eagerly. So I was not, I'm not surprised by this talk about culture, because the culture, by the way, is a neutral term. It's the way we do business. That's the definition of culture. And you can have good cultures and healthy cultures and bad cultures. And my sense is that there's a very, very long-standing troubling culture in the jail. And it has gone undetected by outsiders because, let's be honest, inmates and correction officers don't have a whole lot of, they don't have a big constituency out there. And I guess I see my role on the board as a community member and representing the community. And if I was a community member, seeing the things I've seen and hearing the things I've heard, I would be asking for somebody from the outside who has absolutely no connection to the county, who has experience with Inspector General type investigations, doing an investigation, because it's not as simple as to say you're either for or against one of the most recent director. This is everybody knows, it's no secret. I had my problems with Raul Benasco, and we came to some interesting conclusions about it. But he also did some really good and healthy things. And he was an incredibly hard worker. And I think he shook up the system significantly, even though I may not have always liked the way he did everything. That investigation is very complex and I think very deep. And I just reviewed all of the testimonials I've gotten yesterday all at once, and I shouldn't have done it because it was took me to a very, very dark place. And I think if we're going, there shouldn't be any big rush on bringing a new director in. I think there needs to absolutely be an outside person as interim director, because this interim period is going to be longer than we want it to be, because we have to do something about cleaning up the culture and cleaning up what's going on in the jail before a new director comes in, or the very same thing will happen again, I'm afraid. The only other thing I want to say is I know quite a few of the corrections officers, because I know and I have a lot of pride in what they're doing, and I don't think they hear that very much. And I also care deeply about the women that I sit with and listen to their stories. And I wish we could be more responsive to the community and let the community hear, have listening sessions and hear what we're doing too. So thank you very much. I know I'm probably over my time.
No worries. Thank you so much. We're going to have to end our
Well, Madam Chair, I know we do have another meeting, but I did have a question because it kind of hit me that I think that we have looked at the recommendations from this advisory about not making any changes. And so I guess my question is, did the higher ups know that this was your recommendation, and so they went ahead on and put an interim person in there in the first place? I don't know if that's a Reverend Duval question or whoever, but that's a burning question for me. That was the advice of the advisory board ignored?
To the best of my understanding, Councilwoman, in fairness, were they made aware? Yes. Again, I'll just leave it at this, that the communication, we do understand everything was very fluid. The communication was exchanged, but that would be something that only the ninth floor could answer, as well as the ninth floor and Mr. Darby. I would suggest that they would answer that question.
Is Mr. Darby available to answer that question? The question was, the advisory board had recommended to the powers that be that there not be insider interim director at that particular time. Now, I don't know why they gave it to you because you are there now. Was that information forwarded to the county executive and their team? And it was that just ignored, or they didn't feel that they needed to do that at this particular time? What's your sense of that?
Ms. Day, I can't answer that question because I didn't make that decision. I was informed by the ninth floor, the county executive's office, to assume the duties.
That's good enough. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to I think we have one public comment.
Madam Chair, before we get to that, I have one brief question.
Okay, well, I have been asked to end my meeting at 4:45, but I'll let you ask one more question.
It's very
I've been getting text.
And I'm not sure who wants to answer this, but I had asked, after receiving 6 different emails and complaints from members of the Department of Justice Services, I had forwarded those to Mr. Calvert and Mr. Chapman. Never received a response all the way back several months ago. And my question is, I had asked for one of them to be here today for us to talk with them to find out what they're doing from an executive management level. And maybe Councilwoman Gray, you could answer. Did they decline to attend this today?
As you can see, we ran out of time with the number of people that we had. We just didn't have time to have anyone else on the call today.
So you did not ask them to attend today?
I would say no, we didn't. But I did tell them that we would want them on to attend the next meeting, or someone to attend the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, may I ask?
Pardon me?
May I ask one quick question? May I ask one quick question, please?
Yes. Councilwoman Clancy, is that
Weber?
okay? Yes. Yes, you may, Councilman Tracus.
Okay. Again, my question goes to Ms. Taylor, and thank you for your very candid statement. In your opinion, Ms. Taylor, with the retention of either an interim or permanent outsider to manage the justice services, is the situation fixable with this culture in place, or does it require some serious eradication? In other words, can the situation be fixed with the status quo in place, or do changes have to be made?
Changes have to be made, but I would expect those suggestions to come from out of the investigation. This investigation isn't just about personnel matters. I think this is a much broader, as Jeff said, a much broader, much deeper investigation about how we do business and how business has been done for a long time. I'm not surprised that there are some people who think that this is the way things have always been, but that doesn't mean the way things that have always been have been fair or equitable or and the way we should do business. So change will have to be made, and I think and I'm sure, and I think Mr. Howard has probably some ideas about how things should be made too. But in terms of the culture, all I can say is what I hear is anecdotal, but it is a fairly large volume of anecdotal. And it leads me to believe that the letter you read during the public comment during the council is not the story that I'm hearing from everybody else. And when that comes up, I don't know, I just want the evidence, Mr. Tracus, right? I just want,
right.
What's the evidence for any of these positions? And I think the culture is there are so many interconnections with the county executive's office and the council and justice services and personnel that an outside person would be a refreshing and objective and responsible way to go forward to find out what needs to be changed, who needs to be moved, perhaps, and maybe I'm certain that there are an awful lot of people there who would like some rehabilitation, or to be able to see a different way of doing business. And I think our community would like, after 5 deaths that I feel like we've just stepped over them, frankly. 5 deaths and the allegations of abuse, that I think our community expects us to do something differently.
Thank you for your candor and your service. That's all I have, Madam Chair, and thank you for your allowing me to ask the question.
Thank you, Advisory Board, for your service. We have public comments now.
We have one public comment. Do you want me to read that?
If it's
Madam Chair?
it's required, so yes.
Okay. My name is Kara Braxton, 12-plus year employee of Justice Services. On August 26th, I became concerned about my safety. However, as of August 28th, my concerns were validated. I'm in constant fear of my safety, emotional health, and security of my job. My door was marked with a witchcraft symbol, which a coworker noticed. I contacted Clayton Police because it was a threat against my person. After contacting Clayton Police, I was pulled into Tina Maloney's office by Interim Director Darby Howard and verbally reprimanded for over 5 minutes for not informing him that I was calling the police. It was my off day. The police said I had to be there. Darby was made aware of my presence by St. Louis Police Department Sergeant McCartney's supervisor. Mr. Howard not one time inquired of my welfare nor my story until after I stated, quote, Darby, what bothers me as well is that you have not one time asked me if I'm okay. What happened, end quote. He then argued with me and disingenuously asked, was I okay? I told him that I felt I was being targeted because of the anonymous letter that I received along with a lot of other people. Also, that I knew my computer had been searched per personnel across the street to see if I sent it from work, and that he knew that information as well. This letter was the only thing that Darby seemed to care about. He only had questions about the letter. He also stated how Justice Services' dirty laundry was being aired. He just wanted to put what happened to me behind us and move forward. I say me because the only thing he was clear that he wanted investigated was the author of the letter. In speaking with Tina Maloney today as we checked on each other's well-being, she told me that Darby Howard stated to her today that what's happening right now is significantly my fault for sending an email of that letter, period. He said they got the letter. That was when the petition against the last director was done. This just goes to prove that the letter that Brittany Jones is absolutely true, and now the original doors that were marked Raul, Tina Maloney, and myself are targets of the so-called family. Julia Childry Murphy's presence in Interim Howard's office is constant. Madam Chair, that's all the comments.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Well, I think if I may, I don't, are there any recommendations that come out of this hearing? I for one would like to make a motion to affirm the recommendation made by the advisory board that there be a moratorium on personnel changes during this interim director phase.
I'll second that if I can.
Is that a motion, Councilwoman Clancy?
Yes. And I heard Councilman Harder second it.
I'm not sure if is Councilman Harder on the committee. I'll second it.
No, he's not.
I'll second it. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will, for the record, affirm the advisory board's recommendation for a moratorium on the record.
And additionally, I would like to make another motion to also an affirmation with the advisory board's recommendation that there be a comprehensive external investigation of the Justice Services Department. I don't see that as mutually exclusive necessarily to anything we may pursue, but I think that this is significant, and I think that we need to have a recommendation from this committee to move forward with that as well. So with that, a motion to recommend that there be a comprehensive external investigation of the Justice Services Department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
since we're making motions, I would also like to make a motion that we have another committee of the whole on this, and that we go into a private session so that we can hear some more statements and other data about the situation.
And I'll go ahead and make the motion as a committee member. I agree with Councilman Harder. And I do think that we need to bring in someone from the county executive staff. Mr. Chapman comes to mind to participate in that closed session. So with that, I make a motion to proceed with this inquiry with a to be scheduled closed session of the Justice, Health, and Welfare Committee.
Second.
I'll second that motion.
I was going to say we didn't need a motion. That I hear his recommendation, and I intend to have another follow-up meeting. For other meetings that we have to schedule, and then the budget does start mid-October, I believe, toward the end of October. So we don't have a lot of, well, we can do it on other dates other than Tuesdays.
Right.
But,
Yeah, I think this is pretty urgent. So
Absolutely.
my office will work with you all to squeeze this in. But I do think that this is pretty important. If not in 2 weeks, then sooner even, maybe even next week, although I do know it's a holiday weekend. So we'll see what we can do.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
adjourned.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.